We are at the 2011 Busan Kotesol conference, speaking with Lisa Levine, who just finished her presentation. What was the name of your presentation?
Motivating students with high interest content using Glee.
And she brought along attendee Bob Snell.
Hello.
All right, so using the TV show Glee, for those who don't know what Glee is, can you give us a little background?
Sure, it's an American TV series. It's now in its second year. It's kind of a hybrid format, sitcom, drama, and musical, which is what makes it unique and fun for the students.
Okay, so how did you approach this high interest kind of material in a meaningful way in your class? First of all, what class is it? What is the...
The name of the class is Cinema English, although I interpreted that rather broadly and made it sort of mass media English. It's for undergraduates at Sungcheol University. They're not English majors, so it's an elective open to anyone, and a large class, 50 students, very multi-level.
Okay, so how did you approach it?
Well, what I did was I introduced the students to the content, meaning American high school culture, and the format, the musical format, and let's see. I think what happened was at the very beginning, I got their interest because it's because of the music. I'm not sure if I'm addressing your question directly. How did I introduce it was what you had asked?
Well, both of them. I mean, first of all, why you chose that,
Okay.
and it is kind of a different format for a TV show. So really basically everything about how you introduced it and how you implemented it in your class.
Okay. Well, the first piece of what you asked, how I chose it, I personally kind of fell in love with it myself, and I thought the students would like it just because it's so much based on young people's lives, and there's so much pop culture and pop music and so on. I introduced it by telling them, this is what it's about, and it's new and it's fun. And the very first episode shows a few scenes of the kids in the Glee Club performing, excuse me, to some popular songs. The way I used it in class, we did a lot of activities where students, for example, might do a role play about characters or do a listening activity with song scenes. Sometimes we did writing activities in which I asked them to describe their feelings about a particular relationship between the characters, something like that. Yeah. So I tried to have every class have lots of interactive activities.
How much? Take us through an average class. How much of a clip would you play? How does the flow go?
Okay. Well, one thing I mentioned in the presentation was that they have to watch full episodes as homework. So we don't spend time in class just sitting and watching TV, right? So they're responsible for knowing the plot, knowing what happens. It's available with Korean and English subtitles. They know how to get it online. So in class, I would always focus just on a couple of clips, maybe 2 or 3 minutes apiece, not more. And depending upon what it was, for example, if it were a clip showing a meeting in the principal's office where the Glee Club teacher and the cheerleading coach have an argument, I would pre-teach some of the vocabulary because it would be very fast speaking, and then the follow-up activity might be something like the students writing an ongoing dialogue between those two and sharing that with a small group. Yeah.
So what have been some of the lessons learned by you? What has worked well? What would you do differently next time?
Okay. What has worked well? The students, not meaning to blow my own horn, but the students love the music scenes, and those work the best. They laugh out loud at some of them. That's worked well in that they get excited, they're motivated, they're jazzed, and anything that follows up on a music scene is usually one of the most high energy activities in the classroom. What's been challenging is this isn't so much specific to Glee and cinema English, but simply having a large multi-level class and managing that. Sometimes I think maybe I could have done a better job in pre-teaching some of the material. Sometimes I may have assumed that they understood more than they did. They're not going to speak up and say in front of their classmates, I don't know what that person meant in that dialogue scene. And I didn't discover until later on, doing some sort of comprehension check, that they really didn't follow what was going on. So I suppose that's something, and assessment also. I would like to, if I teach it again, this is the second time I've taught it, if I teach it again, I'd like to find a better way to do assessment.
How did you do assessment?
So far what I've been doing is I give them written homework assignments where they have to do a couple of paragraphs about a particular question about what's going on in the story. I do short quizzes, which is mostly vocabulary and some writing. I assess them on class participation, but because it's such a large class, that's a little bit hard to do. And written final exam, written midterm exam. I'd like to find a way to get them doing more oral production, and I'm still struggling with how to do that well in a class of that size. Yeah.
Bob, have you ever seen Glee?
No, this was my first time to see it. I just heard a little bit about it on the internet, and it was great. It was very funny, high energy, and people in the presentation all seemed to enjoy it. There were lots of laughing going on. So,
Do you use any kind of media like this in your teaching?
I have in some of my content courses. I've shown videos, but I haven't done it on a regular basis like a cinema class where we watch the same series over and over.
Yeah. And I think that's always the challenge. I mean, it can be high interest, but having it comprehended, having understood not just the words but the meaning, because there is so much cultural teaching involved, and then how to make it effective language learning along the way. Anything you picked up from this presentation, Bob?
I always think it's interesting when teachers try to use content in English classes, because I think that teaching with content is probably one of the most valuable ways of helping students develop their English. It can be challenging for them at first, but once they start getting into the subject, I think it just sort of takes over. And that was the whole point of the presentation, motivating the students to get excited about studying. And I think it works. I think it's a very effective method. So I always like to see what other teachers are thinking about and how they're designing their own ideas.
Were there any questions or issues raised during the presentation for further discussion, or did you have any follow-up questions for Lisa?
My main idea is how can I do it myself? I'd like to do something like that, but so far in our program we don't have a cinema English class that I know about.
That would make a nice. Again, full disclosure, Bob and I work together here at Busan University of Foreign Studies in a teacher training program, and I mean we do use some media like this and listening courses and things. You mentioned they know where to find it online. It's a little bit of a blurry line because, and a lot of times the sites that have this stuff available disappear. You can find it with Korean subtitles? Where do you find that?
I personally don't know where to find it with Korean subtitles, but students have done so. I sort of I don't ask too much about that. But it's also broadcast here. I mean, I saw it. I was in the hospital in January, and I saw it with Korean subtitles broadcast in the waiting room. So, it's out there. It's like this international phenomenon, to be honest. And if you go to YouTube, you can find Glee flash mobs in Europe. You can find middle school Korean students doing a karaoke version of one of the songs. Honestly, you can. It's kind of everywhere. But I wanted to say something about what you had just said, which is that maybe I didn't attain my goal in the presentation, because what I had hoped when I set out was to give everyone who attended something they could take away and be able to use in their own setting. And it sounds like you're not sure how you could use it in your own setting.
Do you have materials to go along with this that are available online or anything?
I have I haven't put a lot online yet, but thank you for mentioning that. That's a good idea. Yeah. Today I simply brought some paper handouts to show an activity that I do in class, and I walked them through actually 2 activities, but unfortunately rather quickly just because of the time limit.
Because the thought that just occurs is, wouldn't it be cool if you had classes all over the world using this as their curriculum, and there was a place for them to talk about it?
That's a very cool idea. Thank you. Yeah, I kind of feel like the Glee girl, you know.
And I think
I've presented about 3 times.
a lot of teachers might be very interested in doing something like this, but they just want to have a little more suggestion about the structure of how to set up the class and some ideas for activities.
Right.
Have you encountered any objections or obstacles from students or from administration? Has anyone said, you're having too much fun?
I certainly hope not. Nobody said it to me. I haven't gotten any negative feedback. I've gotten overwhelmingly positive feedback from students. Yeah, I included clips from student interviews in the presentation that we were just in. Yeah, nobody has said it's too much fun.
And especially, I mean, with that course, if it's a cinema class, but I know sometimes if administration sees someone watching a movie in a class, a conversation class,
Right.
they're going to say, oh, lazy teacher, they're just
Right.
pushing a play button.
Right. As I said, we spend maximum a few minutes actually watching the scenes in class time.
And I
yeah.
think that's a big key to this succeeding, is that they're supposed to watch it outside of class. And have you gotten the sense that they actually do?
You know, as with any course, some students are doing the homework diligently and on time, and others aren't, I'm sure.
And as homework goes, that's not too tough.
It's not tough. It's fun. It's homework goes. Yeah, I mean, they do occasionally also have written homework, but the way I know that they may not have done the watching homework is someone will ask a question during class about something that's going on in the plot, and it's like, if you watched, you know why that person did that thing, you know? But yeah, it's fun homework, really, it is. I had a thought a moment ago. What was it? I mean, I don't know who your students are these days. When we were watching a video clip of a couple of my students doing a role play dialogue, and these are undergraduates, these 2 young men, and they use slightly, not vulgar language, not sexual language, but cursing, you know, like, oh man, you're full of crap, and so on and so forth. And I noticed 1 or 2 of the audience members sort of, I think, flinching a little bit, and I mentioned that only because you need to adapt the material, you know. It could be used with much younger people as long as that as long as the parts of the plot that led the students to make a dialogue, you know, cursing each other out, weren't the focus. Yeah, yeah.
That is part of what makes it high interest.
Yeah, absolutely. Because for university students, I mean, it's about high school kids and their lives, and their lives include, you know, there's a teen pregnancy, and there's scandal about who the real father is, and there's a young guy coming out to his dad, but that's just life. I mean, that's what happens, at least in the U.S. And so I told them, you know, this is American culture, and nobody would necessarily say it's a great thing that a 17-year-old high school cheerleader is pregnant. However, this happens, and this is how it's being dealt with in this context.
It's really, forgive the wording, but fertile material. I mean, there's so many different directions you can go with.
Yeah.
With this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's one of the strong points of using that particular show. It seems to be something that's very relevant to young people, so they relate to it quite easily.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. And what they seem to focus on most is the relationships, you know. I mean, there's all kinds of things going on. School politics, conflicts between teachers, the principal, families. But when I give them the option, what they focus in on, because just who they are, their age, is who has a crush on who, who's dating who's breaking up with who, you know. And that's fun, that's natural, they're into it, you know.
All right. Any closing thoughts from either of you? Anything else we should know?
Just thank you for your suggestion about putting materials up online.
And we should mention that the video from your presentation will be online along with this at careerbridge.net/Kotesol, and maybe some materials to go along with it. And are you going to keep doing this in the future?
I hope so. I definitely hope so. Each time I've done it, I've adapted it because I've had a slightly different context. Chances are next time I do it, it'll be slightly different form again, but I have probably as much or more fun than the students. So.
If you do it again, will you use the same season, the same episodes, or will you stay current?
Good question. I might have to stay current. I feel like I could recite episodes 1 to 13 in my sleep now, so I might be
But that's an issue with some of these shows. Is there's so much foundation that gets laid in the first season or whatever that if you walk in season 2, you're lost.
Yeah, exactly. I would have to figure out a way to sort of background it. And
Maybe you have to develop a whole curriculum. You can get a master's of Glee or something.
And I would support
I like that idea.
if you want to start a blog or something. I think that would be a great idea for attracting some other teachers and having a discussion about using media. And,
Great, thank you for the idea. Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff online by Glee fans, wikis and websites and so on, but I don't know that there's anything by teachers.
That a teacher
about
can
it.
go to on Monday morning and say, this is what I'm doing in class.
Exactly, yeah. And I've done that so many times. I've created all those lessons, sometimes at the last minute, that you might as well share.
Right.
All right, well, thank you very much for sharing your ideas with us, and
Thank you so
we'll look forward to staying tuned.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks.
And thank you.